Hi, I'm Louis Falgu, and welcome to The Music Breakdown. Today on Essentials, I've got an album that was a defining moment for indie rock in the 2000s, and that is Funeral by Arcade Fire. So this is the debut album by Canadian indie rock band Arcade Fire. They did release an EP before this, but this was their commercial debut. The album was released in 2004, and its influence on the genre has been heard ever since. Which is not to say that Funeral is without its own musical influences. I wouldn't say that it's the first album, or the first rock album to incorporate orchestral instrumentation. Of course it's not. It's more just that this album is an absolutely perfect mix of all of these instruments. It uses them in just the right way to pack just a huge emotional punch. And lyrically on this album, you're getting themes of the loss of childhood, of having to grow up. Also the loss of family members, as many members of the band were losing family members around the time that this album came out, hence the title Funeral. Really, I guess its main theme is just loss in general, because the themes of losing childhood and growing up tie in perfectly with the themes of losing your family members, because that is something that it will happen as you grow up. And the album opens with Neighborhood Number 1, Tunnels, which is the first of 4 tracks titled Neighborhood. This album opens on a beautiful and lush foundation of instruments. You hear strings, piano, and then eventually this amazing guitar riff comes in. It's nothing that rocks. When I say guitar riff, that's probably what you think, but it's really just a beautiful lead melody. There's some fantastic imagery of being in a neighborhood covered with snow, and these two children, we presume, wanting to go to meet each other. Maybe they're from across the street. You know, I sort of imagine one child looking out of the window at the other, saying that, I want to dig a tunnel from my window to yours, to dig a tunnel through the snow. It's a really powerful image, and it evokes this really intense feeling of nostalgia. But the lyrics progress throughout these characters' lives as they forget how to name their babies. They forget all the names they used to know, and they also forget their parents. They forget the rooms they used to live in. Really, this track has a beautiful and powerfully sad progression. You feel like this song narrates the course of someone's entire life. And the chorus on this thing is just such a cathartic release of emotion. It is a phenomenal opening track. And on Neighborhood Number 2, you get this really creative drum groove. It's nothing all too complex, but it lays a really cool foundation for the rest of this track. And the vocals on the verses here sound like they're being played out of an old-time loudspeaker, almost like a gramophone. Now, this song isn't as nostalgic or as sad as many of the others on the album, but the chorus ties in the characters who are mentioned throughout this track to the Soviet astronaut dog, Laika, as if to say that these characters, who in the verses are being told, you can do it, really can't, that they're shooting too far, they're reaching too high. And this album flows so fucking well, because from this track into Un année sans lumière is just a great cool down moment. I mean, this track really feels like walking through street life at night. You're seeing, street lights and empty roads, or at least that's what I think of. But I don't think it's too far off, as a lot of the imagery relates to streetlights and shadows. And to pick us back up from this cool down period, the finale of this track is fantastic. It's just so driving and loud, and it's joyous, it's expressive. And then we hit Neighborhood Number 3, which is almost apocalyptic. This track is so noisy and chaotic, so post-punky. But the verses are also very pretty. I mean, they have these very bright xylophone melodies in the distance, and really, the vocal melody is pretty as well. But it's just that these are always followed out with this extremely powerful guitar chords. And of course, that pummeling drum beat that never lets up. It's fantastic. It's just explosive. To close out the Neighborhood series, you've got one of the softest songs on the record, Neighborhood Number 4, 7 Kettles. Using the old saying of a watch pot never boils is a really fantastic way to close out the Neighborhood series. Closing off on a lot of these themes of lost childhood by suggesting that, when you're a kid, these things feel like they last forever, but then you grow up. But the lyrics on this track also suggest that nothing really changes. I mean, especially as you're growing up, you see the same things constantly happening, and you wonder what it is that you're waiting for. Now, Crown of Love is a really fantastic ballad, and it's one of the most outwardly sad songs here. It's about lost love. And I really like the imagery of the crown of love is not upon me, as if it was something taken away, like as if Win Butler was dethroned. And now that we're mentioning Win Butler, his vocal performance on this entire record is emotive and powerful, but especially on certain moments on this track where he really just belts it out. And I love how that's followed up by those beautiful string melodies on the chorus here. And this track is followed by the absolutely incredible Wake Up. Just one of the most powerful explosions of emotion on any record I've ever heard. The loud and bombastic whoa 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 chorus is definitely very influential, but how many indie rock bands have done it as well as these guys did on this song? I can't think of one. And that's just because they managed to make it sound so huge, and it's such a cathartic emotional release similar to the chorus on the first track here. And on this song, Win Butler is like speaking to children now that he's an adult, saying, please let your emotions come out. Have emotions, have experiences, because if you bottle everything up, then everything will fly by, and before you know it, the summer, which is sort of used as a small metaphor for childhood as a whole, because, when you're a child, summertime's the most amazing thing in the world, and it's what we often associate with being children. But he says that they're going to turn the summer into dust, and the children must experience it now because it's gonna be gone before you know it. And this song finishes out with a really dance-influenced ending, which is pretty fucking fantastic, where the lyrics suggest that the Reaper is going to reach out and touch their hand, like they're reaching the end of their life, and they don't know when they could go at any moment. Now, Haiti is the first track where Regine Chachange, if I'm pronouncing that right, takes the lead vocals, and it's pretty much mostly her song. I mean, Win Butler gets a verse too. And the song is just a really fantastic portrayal of the turmoil in Haiti that her parents fled from. Now, a lot of the lyrics are in French, so I can't understand everything, but what I can understand certainly evokes some pretty powerful imagery. And this song provides another great cool-down moment from Wake Up. Now, on the song Rebellion, Win Butler writes some of the most interesting lyrics in the entire record, something I can't say I've ever heard before. He writes as though he is going to rebel against sleep. And this, again, ties in with the central theme here of all the lost time that he feels he's had, and that, we feel we all have. It's like, how much of our lives do we spend asleep? How much experience could we have had in all that time? And it's almost like he finds himself wishing that he could have it back, that by rebelling against sleep, and if the sons and the daughters all rebel against sleep, they'll have more fulfilling lives. They won't lose everything as so quickly, which ties back to the song Wake Up as well. And this song is just a constant musical build. I love the way that coincides with the lyrical refrain of every time you close your eyes. It just makes the song feel so freeing. And then finally, Regine Chachange takes the lead on In the Back Seat, the final track here, and my god, her performance is show-stopping. This song perhaps feels even more Baroque than all of the other ones, and not necessarily because they're using these orchestral instruments any more than they were before, although maybe a little bit, but just because of the way the song theatrically builds. Regine relates taking control of her life and getting over her mother's death with being afraid of driving. It's just a really powerful and beautiful metaphor. Like, she's stuck in the back seat. She's been wanting and learning to drive her whole life, as in she has been wanting to take control of her life emotionally after her mother's death. And when you get to the chorus and she sings, "Alice died in the night, I've been longing to drive my whole life," it's truly tear-jerking. And I just love that the song finally explodes the second time she says, "I can watch the countryside." You start to feel in that moment like she is ready to regain control, so that as the song fades out with this absolutely phenomenal fade out outro, you really do feel this power, you feel this freedom, you feel like Regine is going to take control, although it never does quite give you that closure. And all in all, this record is just fucking phenomenal. I mean, the way all of the instrumentation comes together is truly beautiful. It never feels excessive. It never feels like it's trying too hard. A lot of the times when you bring strings into rock music, it can just seem cheesy and lame. But on this album, everything comes together so nicely. The rock instrumental bass feels like it's working with all of the other instruments, like it's only a part of the greater whole here. And man, the lyrical themes and the powerfully emotive vocal performances from both Win and Regine are truly something to behold. This album just evokes nostalgia in a way that few albums do, and it really hits close to home for me, at least. I'm sure that it will for many of you if you haven't already heard it, and if it hasn't already done that for you. But of course, Funeral is an essential that all music fans need to hear. And that's pretty much all I've got to say for this amazing record. Bye, guys. You